Hey, good day to you guys. This is Seb, the Canadian Wilbury. Again, I hope you guys are doing well. I want to touch base this time with you guys to talk about this bizarre thing that Canada has been doing quite recently with the arrival of our brand new Prime Minister. And this is adopting some laws, and I'm talking about Bill C-2 and Bill C-5. These two bills are supposed to boost security, but when you start reading them, because I did try to read them, and you observe all the fine details, seems to me that the government is a little bit more interested in controlling all of us than boosting security. And the question that I have is it easier to control people than to really protect them? Let's dig into this one. There's a lot to unpack here. All right, you guys, so we are going to start wrapping our brain around Bill C-2. Bill C-2 is supposed to make Canadian borders a lot more secure for everybody. And it touches 5 grand team. This is a really beefy piece of law with over 140 pages. It's not meant for sheer mortals like you and I. So those 5 grand teams are borders and customs enforcement. We have a better control on drugs and precursor chemicals. Canada Post mail search enhancements is also included in here. Electronic data and lawful access authorities, and enhancing security and communication for the Coast Guard, immigration, refugees, and anti-money laundering. When I am reading this with the help of ChatGPT, trying to translate in real words what this could mean, I cannot help to feel that we are not a border, we are citizens. So let's begin with the language, and this is really about the language. Like every law in Canada, it's the way that it's written in here, that they are now boosting information demand, meaning that if you are going to cross the Canadian border, and it says here, I underline it, the peace officer, for example, or public officer may make a demand in the form blah 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 to a person who provides service to the public, requiring the person to provide in the form, matter, and time specified in the demand the following information. So they could technically just come to you if they realize that you are in touch with the public, whether or not you provide services, that subscriber, client, account, and that sort of information. If the person provides services to that subscriber, client, account, or identifier, the date on which the person began providing the services, the name or identifier, if known, of any other person who provides services to the public and who provide or has been providing services to that subscriber, client, account, identifier, etc., etc., etc. Right? And so they can now come and ask you a lot more details if or should you are a company, and let's say that you are an internet service provider. Well, that's the kind of thing that they are going to be able to come and snatch away. Now, another thing here, and the way that this law is written, is what you're seeing here, conditions for making that demand. That the peace officer or public officer may make the demand only if they have a reasonable ground to suspect that an offense has been or will be committed under this act. So it's no longer you are innocent until proven guilty. If they suspect you might be committing something, then they are giving themselves permission to do something like this. And there is even a non-disclosure in here. So the same peace officer or public officer who made the demand may impose condition in that very demand prohibiting the disclosure of its existence or some or all of its content for a period no greater than a year. So I don't know, let's say that you are a small company and then you give services to some client, you may be forced to give away some details, and you may not be able to say to those clients, hey man, I'm sorry, but I think that the government of Canada may be in possession of some or all of the details that I had in my possession. You're not going to be able to tell them because they can force you into silence. And the final one, this one is bizarre because usually when you are doing something like this, you must always have a, or the peace officer who's doing something like this should always have a warrant in its back pocket, meaning that if it comes from a judge, technically fair enough, you have to obey the law. But get this, right under section 167, or should I say article 167 section 487.11 of the act is replaced by the following: exigent circumstances, a peace officer or public officer may, in the course of their duties, exercise any of the powers described in section 487 for blah 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 without a warrant if the conditions for obtaining a warrant exist, but by reason of exigent circumstances, it would be impractical to obtain one. So the law goes as far as to say, oh yeah, you're supposed to have a warrant if you want to conduct a search or if you want to see some information, but under certain circumstances, if it is deemed impractical to get a warrant, who cares? Who needs a warrant? Just go, Mr. Peace Officer, do what you have to do, and everything's gonna be okay. Again, I have to ask, is this aim at a little bit more security, or are we trying to hide a little bit more control into something like this? So if and when this piece of legislation will be adopted by the Canadian Parliament, are we really going to be able to fully trust our institutions anymore? All right, guys, we are going to continue our journey into this by now focusing our attention on Bill C-5. And the Bill C-5 is, I'm almost calling it when the minister just has to say yes kind of bill. This is supposed to fast track Canada's economical growth just by identifying certain kind of project, and then the minister becomes responsible for accelerating said project in question and to make sure that everything is settled and just give the green light so that we can just proceed. But the law and the way that it's been written is divided into two distinct parts. The first part is the elimination of some interprovincial red tapes. In other words, if a product, some cheese, let's say, and some of the regulations are kind of similar in other provinces but not identical, so the government of Canada is just going to say, all right guys, if it's good enough for the province of Quebec and it's mostly the same everywhere, then let's consider this product to be sold everywhere, and that's it. So this is going to help interprovincial commerce a lot. And the second part is, this is where things are getting interested in this particular law, is that this is the creation of some special document every single time you have a huge project that is being identified where the minister can approve a lot on his own. And this is where, again, the wording of the law is really interesting. If we start looking here, the power of governor in council, national interest projects. If the government in council is of the opinion that a project is in the national interest, the governor may, on the recommendation of the minister, always the minister is in there, amend Schedule 1 to add the name and the project and a brief description of it. So this is what I'm talking about. Like there's a list, so a set project will be put on that list. If you need some amendment on the recommendation of the minister, the government in council may have some amendment. You have some deletion right here. You can impose some limits. There's a couple of factors in here that can be identified to justify said project, strengthen Canada's autonomy, resilience, and security, provide economic and other benefits to Canada, have the likely likelihood of a successful execution. So you see where this is going. And there is, of course, the consultation aspect. So before or any recommendation can be made under subsection 1, 3, and 4, meaning that everything that we just saw up there, the minister must consult with any other federal minister, obviously, because if you are going to have an environmental project, well, you may want to consult your colleague in there. And you must also consult with the Indigenous people whose rights are recognized and affirmed by Section 35 of the Constitution Act of 1982. But there is one thing that is very peculiar about this law, that the minister has to consult with Indigenous people, but the word consultation is not defined. So, what is a consultation? An email, a phone call, a voicemail, a PDF, a Zoom call? Who knows? We don't know exactly. I am going to show you another thing that might be very interesting in the wording. So we are going to go into clause 22, regulations enactment, and you can read this with me on the screen. The governing council may, on the recommendation of the minister responsible for the enactment, make regulation A, exempting one or more national interest project from the application of any provision that enactment of any provision of regulation made under that enactment, and varying the application of any provision refer into paragraph A in relation to one or more national interest project. You can start to see where the problem may lie, especially that if you have some very strict environmental rule regulations and the minister at the federal level is like, yeah, we have a pipeline, but you know what, Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, that kind of regulation about that environmental rules and stuff doesn't matter. I give myself permission to perhaps give an exemption to that. What is Canada trying to do? There are some people who disagree, and they disagree for very good reason, and we are going to dig into this now. All right, guys, let's continue. But before we go to the people who disagree, I have a quick little mise a jour update to give you guys. Bill C-5 has been given a veto when it comes to certain kind of industry, and these are the energy sector and, of course, everything that is nuclear. So, for example, if Canada has identified a nuclear power plant as being one of the most important projects, eventually the minister not only must go to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, but the commission may exercise a veto on that project if the commission is not satisfied with what was identified, the reason as to why. Is there any environmental concern that the minister may have said, well, you know what, we're probably going to, when it comes to the energy sector and the nuclear industry, let's say, there are commissions that are being given veto. And one of the reasons why I'm saying this is because if you look at the Indigenous people, it says that the treaty and the 1982 constitution is protecting them, but they have not been given any veto at all. And maybe this is the reason why they ended up reacting the way they did. I am sharing with you guys a very, very entertaining and important document about the Indigenous leaders reacting to Bill C-5. Not only that, they ended up getting a forum on this on June 17, and this is a summary of it and their national virtual forum on Bill C-5. And this document is explaining their position. So if you start reading this, you feel that the Indigenous leaders are feel like that the entire process, meaning the idea behind the law and the way that this was being done behind closed door, feel kind of rushed. And there is no meaningful consultation that was done with basically anyone, because Canada ended up surprising all of us with that bill. They also identifying that their national interests are defined too narrowly, and this bill may exclude Indigenous priorities out of this. Um, some leaders are also saying that they may be trying to delay or amend the bill, and some organization collective responses will be coming to try and have perhaps a better discussion. And all of the Indigenous leaders are defending themselves, claiming they're not against progress, and this is not the reason as to why they're trying to take some of these actions, but it feels like they just want to be treated like a decent partner that they are. And if this is happening in their home and they feel that they may have a thing or two to say about said project in question, should one arise on their territory. So go right ahead, guys, consult this documentation. You will find a YouTube channel is in there. So for those of you interested in actually looking at this forum, they ended up putting it on their YouTube channel. So a very, very interesting resources and a very interesting point of view as well to consult for. All right, guys, we are now going to jump back into C-2 because there is an organism out there that is opposing Bill C-2 the way that it's being drafted. And this is Citizen Lab, as I am going to share my screen with you guys. you are going to see a very interesting text that they ended up producing not so long ago, warning about C2 being able to enabling warrantless data sharing, and this might be done with the USA. Remember what I said to you guys about a warrantless data sharing is that if a warrant cannot be made and it's inconvenient, then Bill C-2 gives permission to some law enforcement to act upon it, right? And so this is something that Citizen Lab is very preoccupied about, and they are also giving a very potent example to a certain specific individual where Canada ended up sending some information to the United States, but these information were either incomplete or incorrect, and this ended up having some grave consequences for that individual in question. You can read that in their text. Very interesting story to read. There is a line that is in that text that I find fascinating, and I want to read it to you guys. And it goes a little something like this. Open quote, Bill C-2 reads like it could have been drafted in Washington, end quote. Citizen Lab is also touching something that is fascinating. They are showing a lot of concern over what we call the second additional protocol, what we call the 2AP from the Budapest Convention. And these guys are saying that this is a privacy that is at risk in there. Why? Because some encrypted messaging may not protect you from device seizure or metadata collection. If you have a dark sense of humor and you're exchanging some Facebook Messenger private messages that are encrypted with your friends, then if everything is being adopted C2, the Budapest Convention, and this 2AP, this second additional protocol, then your privacy may be exposed to some government authorities. And this is something that this organization, Citizen Lab, is warning us about. In fact, they are probably recommending Canada to not go forward with the Budapest Convention and this second additional protocol. A fascinating read that I really encourage you guys to do. And finally, guys, a couple of questions for you. Why is Canada bypassing Parliament like this? Why would you risk to annihilate your Indigenous partners in some of those projects like I just described to you? Why are you on the verge of writing a digital surveillance law before you even build and invest properly in the Arctic Ocean? Security is something that is hard to do, and Canada is far from being perfect at it. I am wondering if are we really defending a border here, or are we trying to put some sort of a digital wall that is aimed inward at looking at what we are doing with those little electronic devices in our back pockets? Are we able to do this alone? In other words, what is the real cost for staying in the club? You guys let me know down below what you think about everything that I just said to you, and thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you require anything else, or if you want me to tackle my brain into a specific subject. I'll be more than happy to help you guys. In the meantime, you take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.